Let's bring in our guests who are going to help us answer this question. Joining me, criminal defense attorney who's been following this case, Margaret McLean, and private investigator Lauren Vellucci. Great to have you both here. Margaret, why didn't the Alberts hear anything?
First of all, I love your experiments. You guys crack me up. But why didn't they hear anything? Remember, they were up until 2 in the morning. They had been drinking. I don't know, but I do know that the sirens were not on, and the neighbors also didn't hear anything. So remember that dash cam video that you had that they showed. It was very close to where Karen was screaming, and Cody and the homeowner, they were kind of waiting and sort of listening to see if they could hear you yelling outside, or the car horn and everything. So I think it's fair that they might not have heard anything if they were in a deep sleep.
Okay, Lauren, what are your thoughts here about why the Alberts didn't hear anything that morning?
Yeah, I hate to do it, but I just disagree with my co-panelist, who I love. But I have different views on this. So obviously they were sleeping according to them. However, we know that now there's been evidence that has come out that Jen McCabe actually made a phone call to them early in the morning, and it was answered because I believe it was like 22 seconds, something like that. So I don't buy the story. It doesn't add up. Also, I have friends that are cops. They're always on high alert, and they don't leave their doors open. So the fact that their door was open and they said that they heard nothing, I don't buy that, but I could give them a little break. However, people with dogs know that when something is going on outside, you have blackout curtains, whatever, the dogs don't care about that. They have great hearing. And if there was something going on that property, that dog would have been barking, and it wouldn't have stopped barking because the people didn't go away. So it doesn't add up. It doesn't make sense. And I think that they heard.
Margaret, are you concerned? And it comes back to Chloe again. Chloe's going to loom large in the defense case, but the fact that the dog didn't alert, the dog didn't get fidgety, the dog wasn't moving around or waking up the owners.
Well, I do agree with that. That's bothered me from the first trial. I don't know. However, if you look at the totality of the circumstances, all of the physical evidence and circumstantial evidence that has come in this case, that whether the dog barked or not, and whether the Alberts, heard it, and, I don't think it really plays a big part in this case. It doesn't, remember, people get mixed up about what reasonable doubt really means. And in this case, is that enough to, throw reasonable doubt into this case so that the jury should come back with a not guilty? I don't think so. But, I do agree with my co-panelist here that, yeah, it's kind of weird that the dog didn't bark. I give in on that one.
Lauren, what are your thoughts about, I understand investigators, and they've made a big deal about this defense. The investigators didn't go into 34 Fairview, but Brian Albert, who's a police officer, didn't come out of 34 Fairview.
Yeah, he sure didn't. And that's the other thing. If you believe he was sleeping, if you believe he didn't hear it, okay. Well, at some point he knew what was going on out there, and he never came out. That, again, I have friends that are police officers. That's just not, it defies common sense. It's not something that's going to happen. And this was someone who he just hung out with. So if it for nothing else, he would have come out of the house to make sure that the man was okay, to see if there's anything he could do, and to find out the status of his friend. I don't buy it. I think anyone with common sense would put themselves in his shoes and say, that doesn't make sense. Why wouldn't he come out? He didn't come out because he knew exactly what was on that lawn, and he knew what was going on, in my opinion.
Right, and that's what the defense is saying here. And Margaret, it's a fellow Boston police officer who's on the front lawn. A Boston police officer owns the home. There's a fellow officer dead on his front lawn, never went outside.
I do agree. I think that's strange that he didn't go outside, okay? Maybe he was worried because he knew there was a lot of drinking going on the night before, but overall, I don't think it proves that this big conspiracy existed, because if you look at the hard data, that cell phone never went inside the house. There's no evidence that John O'Keefe ever made it inside that house. And to think that all of those people are part of this big conspiracy, that really doesn't make sense for me.
All right, our guests are staying with us. Coming up next, did John and Karen drive up a hill?
I did test this a few months ago, driving in my vehicle, and the testing that I did consistently resulted in, I think it was 9 flights of stairs climbed while I was driving up the same hill.